I was really confronted with the kind of maternity leave process of taking some time off. And there was a bit when I was in the hospital, we had just had him. My husband snapped this picture of us, which I frequently look back on and think about, wow, what an amazing time. But then the time you don't document was the time right after when I had put him down for a nap in his little bassinet and I was checking my email and responding to Slack messages and talking with my team.
What's up, agency owners? Jason Swenk with another episode of the Smart Agency Masterclass, a podcast for the agency owner that wants to scale faster and hear amazing stories. And on today, we have an amazing story where we're going to talk about, can you take a sabbatical? Do you take time off? Can you take time off and the business keep growing without you? I have a really amazing guest. Let's go ahead and jump in the show. Hey, Alyson, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jason, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on as well. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Alyson Caffrey. I am an operations strategist and founder of Operations Agency. We basically help founders get their businesses out of their brain and centralized in front of their team so that their team can be way more impactful. And we've been doing this over the last 5.5 years, just really standardizing and defrictionalizing the way that companies, specifically service providers and agencies, operate.
Awesome. And how did you get into this?
Probably as most folks get into service-based businesses, right? You start doing something and folks are like, wow, you're pretty good at that. And all of a sudden you have a full client list. That is like the abbreviated version of how I got started. I was actually at a company growing it as an operations manager. And at the time, my husband was in the military. We lived in the beautiful state of Colorado, Jason. And we actually got an opportunity to up-level in his career, which meant the end, unfortunately, with my time at that business. And within 30 days of leaving, a bunch of folks were like, hey, could you do for me what you did for this guy? And I was like, sure, that sounds great. So then Operations Agency was born. It was me as a solo shop in the very beginning. And then we've really just continued to serve over the years. And I've been really grateful for the businesses we've been able to impact and the families we've been able to serve and the folks that we've been able to provide more longevity for.
What's the biggest hurdle that you see within your business, and like what was like a pivotal point? Because I guess where I'm kind of going is a lot of times people don't practice what they preach, me included, right? Like until like we'll be like, oh, I'm a hypocrite on this, and I'm a hypocrite, like it, and it's like, right? It just takes us kind of a couple of years to go through. What was your pivotal moment that you realized, kind of what needed to happen going forward?
Yeah. So when I started Operations Agency, it was me and my husband. We didn't have any kids and he was in the military. So I was by myself 50% of the time, which meant that I had a ton of time to dedicate to my business, right? I was working all the hours, I was doing all the things, and I was able to serve at a really deep level. But then when I had my first son, Frank, I was really confronted with the kind of maternity leave process of taking some time off. And there was a bit when I was in the hospital, we had just had him. My husband snapped this picture of us, which I frequently look back on and think about, wow, what an amazing time. But then the time you don't document was the time right after when I had put him down for a nap in his little bassinet and I was checking my email and responding to Slack messages and talking with my team. And it was a really confronting moment for me because I was the operations person, right? I was the person who should have maybe had all of this stuff figured out before I went into this experience. And it really helped me crystallize, what does this look like actually as you're growing a business? Because I'd helped others grow their business, but I hadn't yet grown my own to that point. And so sometimes you can advise, right, from a point of knowing or from your own expertise, but you don't actually know until you've been really in that position, whether it's growing a family and a business alongside one another, whether it's hiring and firing team members or discussing strategic exits or any of those things. I hadn't experienced any of that until after, right? Having my son and being kind of forced out of the business. And so what it really did was it allowed me to kind of pinpoint where am I spending a lot of my time in the business and what does break down when I start to pivot my focus elsewhere. And it also helped me identify where do I like to spend my most impactful time and where do I really not enjoy spending that time and what do I not enjoy doing in the business.
Why do you think it took you, how long it took you to realize that? Like at that moment when I mean, that's pretty powerful. Like you take a picture with your first son, you put him down and you're on your phone checking in with everybody, right? Like, what do you think, what could have changed earlier than that? Because there's a lot of agency owners listening right now that they're probably at the same point of going, yeah, man, I really can't take a vacation. Or if I'm on vacation,
Mm-hmm.
really not with my family. And that's the whole thing that, the reason why, we do what we do is like, I want all of you to have that freedom to pick and choose, right? To have the freedom to turn things off. So why do you
Mm-hmm.
think you couldn't turn things off before that realization?
Honestly, Jason, I don't think the stakes were high enough, right? When you're holding your child in your hands and you're realizing that you're choosing, like literally, I put my son down to pick up my phone. I chose my business over my baby in that moment. And I felt like a crappy mom. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is how I'm starting off this really, really incredible relationship in my life. And I felt like I needed the stakes to be high enough and really have this physical moment of, okay, this is what I'm choosing. I'm choosing my business over my life. And I think a lot of us wait until that moment presents itself. And fortunately for me, my baby had no idea what was going on. And I was able to kind of pivot and make a couple of changes. But we all know stories of founders, and we've heard these, or maybe even some folks listening have been the lead characters of their own. A lot of times, it's too late. A lot of times we experience something like this and we've already done the damage, and someone decides, whether it's a personal relationship or whether you're neglecting your physical health, we all kind of know. We have that internal voice in our brains and we know when it might be time to start to assess some of the ways that we're spending time inside of our business.
Yeah, I think the thing I see is people go, well, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. I'm building something now. This is my baby. And I need, if I can't do it, no one can do it. Is that what you believed before that point? Like no one can do it as good as me. I have to do it.
Yeah, perhaps. I definitely am a recovering perfectionist, which I'm sure a lot of entrepreneurs are, especially too in the very beginning, right? You start something and you're either freelancing or you're on your own with a handful of team members, and right, your name is your brand, right? So everything that you're touching, and it's also closely associated with you and your value and your positioning in the marketplace. But once you actually decide to kind of remove yourself from things and focus on your process for how you deliver, the value instantly drives up and you instantly can remove yourself from that process. So I talk about this quite a bit actually with my agency owners is like, yes, SOPs are wonderful. And I love SOPs. I firmly do believe that having an internal knowledge base is going to change your life and your agency, period. However, it's even more just a mental shift of I am selling a transformation. I'm not selling my time, right? I'm selling the process. And so getting really clear on your delivery process for each of your services and things like that, it drives the value for your prospects. It drives a little bit more sanity and balance behind the scenes with your team and in your personal life. So I think that a lot of owners of agencies and the ones I've worked with specifically, they have so much industry expertise that it almost feels impossible to like transfer that knowledge to a person. But we also need to be okay with things not being 100% delegated. We have to be okay with just like building muscles and exercising and doing all those things that we can offload 20% of something and it's a win. A small one, but it's a win.
Did you find yourself when you were trying to do everything? Were you at 100% for everything you were doing?
Oh, heck no. No way. I mean, I know so many times, like, I remember joking with my husband because it was so, how do I put it, devastating to cook for one when he was away. So I would joke with him that I would work until like 12, 12 at night, and I would eat tortilla chips for dinner. And then I'd wake up in the morning and I would like have the crappiest workout, or I just wouldn't because I'd sleep in because I was tired. And it was just this kind of vicious cycle of, okay, crap in and crap out, right? And we think about this when it comes to our body, but we very rarely think about it when it comes to our business, right? And if we want to perform at a high level, we need to make sure that the input is also high quality, right? And what I mean by input is establishing some of those systems and procedures to make sure that you have something to lean on. And, you're not always going to show up 100%, all the time, right? This is for the robots and the systems and other things to do, right? And so thankfully, we live in an era where we can really lean on some of these things to be able to put our best foot forward in our business.
So after you had that realization, of hold the baby, start working, right? And you're like, something needs to change. What was the first thing that you started implementing? And how long did it take to change? Or because I know there's a lot of owners, out there, including me, that we're just too busy. I can't even find the time to even keep up. So how am I going to do something like this? So how did you systematically start taking action to make that change?
Yeah. Yeah. So I started changing how I performed inside of my business, like at the baseline. So instead of going in and doing a lot of the work, I would do the work and record my screen. So that was the kind of first big step. I really decided to take kind of that voyeur picture over my shoulder of, hey guys, here's how I would do this. The second thing I did was then I up leveled into kind of an assister mindset, right? So I wasn't doing a lot of the things. I would just provide the resources and perhaps the guidance to be able to get the result on my behalf. And again, this is a muscle. It's not going to happen overnight, just like you were mentioning, Jason, but I think it's really, really helpful to just begin to start to just try it on, right? Try on what it might look like to first and foremost have someone looking over your screen, then move into an assisting type of position where I'm teeing someone else up to, to score the goal, right? And then the third thing that I started thinking through is, well, what might it look like if I just coached somebody through this, right? How can I stress test my frameworks that I'm going to be using with clients? A lot of what I do is very meta, right? I'm like building my own business and stress testing this stuff. And then I get to really serve folks with it when we work with them. But it's really helpful, I thought, to coach behind the scenes with my team and say, hey guys, if I gave you this framework, would you be able to set something up on my behalf, right? Would we be able to create better projects out of this? And a lot of times the answer was yeah. So I really had to graduate into different levels of leadership in that position. And it didn't happen overnight. But the very first thing I started doing, literally the next time that I was working on my business when I went home from the hospital, was I was like, I'm just going to record my screen doing everything.
And how much stuff were you able to start offloading? How did life change for you? And how quickly? Because look, everyone listening is very impatient. We want this done yesterday. What were some of the results?
Yeah. So almost overnight, I would say. So very first screencast, very first day, I was able to begin giving things over to my client success manager in the sense of giving things to clients like email updates and scheduling calls and those types of things. I mean, transparently, things that still lived on my plate, up until that point. So I said, hey, listen, what's the administrative stuff that we can just kind of take off the bottom here and make sure that it goes to another team member? So I would begin with the administrative stuff. That stuff can happen overnight. They can copy you on emails, but let's just be totally honest, for all my recovering perfectionists out there, you're not doing anything totally special when you're sending client reports and updates to them, right? It's fairly similar. So we can get some really, really solid work out there and have clients feeling supported without our direct input. Now, the really big thing that I feel like was helpful for me was being able to have a way to centrally locate pretty much everything so that no one was coming to me being like, hey, Allie, where's blank? So that frustrated me to absolutely no end. And it was something that I felt like was a really elegant and easy solution. So I put someone on my team in charge of just managing company knowledge. And so having one owner for something like that is super impactful. And it should not be you. It should not be the founder. It should not be you, because let's just totally face it, you're not going to keep it updated. There are so many other things that you need to be doing with your time. So having one person keep that in line and then just have that person be on the receiving end of all the screencasts, of all the checklists, of all the things that you're making internally, and having that be centrally located is going to be one of the most impactful things. And so what I started noticing is that I was out of the administrative friction of things. My team asked me far less questions, which left me feeling like, okay, yeah, this sounds good. People understand what they're actually doing. And I was able to stay a little bit more in high level strategy, which I think is a place where a lot of us thrive, right? Where we really think that, our strategy is absolutely our bread and butter and our secret sauce, I guess, if you will, right? The thing that makes us different from all the other agencies. And so that's like been my story. And honestly, I think for a lot of the folks that we work with, that's their story as well, right? They're really able to deliver high level strategy, both on the client end of things and kind of steer the ship in the direction of the business feeling like they're being pulled back into the business.
What was the person's role before? Like, what was their job title that you gave responsibility for the knowledge?
Oh, it was my assistant at the time. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Just honestly, give it to your assistant. I think a lot of us want to reinvent the wheel and we want to say, like, oh, we need an operations manager or we need someone in here. I have met with countless agencies who've told me that they need an operations manager and they don't. They super don't. And they probably won't until they reach about 30, 40 people internally on their team, right? It's really, I think, this thing that a lot of us talk about that feels so complex, right? We have the EOS models and the clockwork and all the things that we're supposed to do, like the one size fits all for operations. But in my opinion, we can access some of these results without all of the red tape and without having it take forever. We can give our assistant the keys to the kingdom and say, hey, listen, every time someone sends you a bit of content or something that you can archive, if we do something really well on a client project and we want to list it as an example for someone else to take a look at, just put it in our knowledge base. Just put it in there.
Yeah. Now I like that because I think some people could overcomplicate it and go like, I totally agree with you. And people are like, oh, I need someone to just take over all of operations. But I'm in the same mentality. And that's how I was. But I'm in the same mentality of you now of going, no, you should hire an assistant. One of our friends, Dan, says like, if you don't have an assistant, you're the highest paid assistant. And I think that's
Yeah.
so true. You got to get rid of some of those low things first because look, no one's going to build relationships like you. So what are the,
Mhm.
I always talk about the 4 or 5 roles a CEO needs to be doing when you transform from an owner to a CEO. And all of you know that. You go back to the other previous episodes. But what are some of the gotchas that you see when you work with agencies when when they're struggling, when they can't take a week off without
Mm.
coming back and going, shit, man, the business didn't grow. It actually went down. Like I'm a prisoner of this thing that I created.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. The first thing I'll mention is that as an operations strategist, my number one thing that I usually need folks to understand before we begin any sort of impactful work together is that there are 2 states of operations, right? There's operations creation and then there's operations management, right? And I think folks want to skip right to the management part, right? They want someone to come in and start managing all the things, but they haven't created the pathways. They haven't paved the roads for someone to be able to drive on. And I think that is 99.9% of the reason why a lot of us get burned with hires, right? Is we have someone come in and they have no idea what to do, but we expect them to just kind of build the plane while they're flying it, right? And it's really, really challenging for somebody. So that's number one, is to really firmly understand that there's operations creation and operations maintenance. And I think that we also need to further understand that creating something that isn't maintainable is going to set us up for failure later on down the road. I know folks with lots of fancy spreadsheets and lots of automations and lots of crazy things set up. But the problem with that is that if someone doesn't understand how to maintain that, then it's going to go out of date faster than you can say Indiana Jones because we're in a digital world. Things go out of date so fast. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that they're building something that's simple to maintain. My husband's actually back in school right now learning regenerative farming practices, and he is super pumped on all these really old school tractors. And he said, there's only like 6 parts that you have to maintain. And he's getting super excited about it. And I was like, whoa, what a really cool example of how this actually works long term. If you have less maintenance, you ultimately have a better system, for a longer period of time. So Those couple of things is where I see for sure service providers just missing it, right? They want to make this super fancy bells and whistles, and it's just way too much for them.
I like that example of the tractor. You know, I'm very mechanical and I like mechanical things. And when there's only 6 things to take care of, it's so much easier than knowing like how do I program this in this programming language and like because everything's like hell my we have a the little Roomba, we call it Rosie, right after the Jetsons. I mean that thing's so complicated. If I take it apart, like there's so many. I was like, like I'll just
And
get
then there's
another
like
one.
an app. It's like a
Yeah,
whole
there's like,
thing.
yeah, it's too complicated. And plus, the first one died a tragic death because my new at the time there was a new kitten, and he pooped on the floor, and then the Roomba tried cleaning that up, and it scattered it everywhere, which is the grossest thing ever.
Oh, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I don't know how we got onto that, but how
Simple
can
systems to maintain.
simple systems? So how do agencies create a simple system? Where do they start, for figuring that out rather than creating this complicated system? Because I feel that you're suggesting create a simple system. So how can they start?
Yeah. So, really simple systems for agency owners have three main components. The first is clear projects, right? We need to know what's in scope, what's out of scope, what's the timeline, right? Creating rules of engagement around how you manage your projects is going to be absolutely critical. And we've all been there. Projects that are going out of scope, projects that are taking way too long. There's thousands and thousands of revisions, right? Start to take a look at some of those projects, get some standard operating procedures in place to support them. So, that's number two. Standard operating procedures, right? We need absolutely everything documented around how we deliver our core services, because what will happen as we scale is if we have folks that are in our projects serving our clients and getting some of those results, then we are going to have a limit because people have lives and time is a limit. We're going to have a limit on how high we can go if we don't have some of those things centralized, because what we want to do is we want to be able to snap our fingers, put someone else in the business and be able to have them generate results on our behalf, right? So projects, SOPs, and the third is transparent reporting. We don't need to overcomplicate this. I know my agency owners tend to do that. They want to see all the nitty gritty details. What we want to really see is key performance indicators about our projects, right? So are they on time? Are they within scope? Are they about the gross profit that we're seeing, right? Are they coming back with, error free or the least amount of errors that we want to see on our projects, right? Some really, really basic things that can help you at the very least lay a foundation to get to the next level. I know some people who do scorecarding and reports operationally like absolute pros. They crush it and they can see so many really cool things. But if you start there, it's going to be like going out and running the marathon on your first day of training, right? You're going to get fatigued. You may even pull a muscle and not ever want to do it again. And it's going to just be way too overwhelming to tackle. So my hope is that if anyone is just starting out and they want to create some simple systems, start with your projects, make sure those are in scope, make sure you have standard operating procedures to support those, and that you have some visibility into how things are functioning overall. And you can watch your stress levels just start to decrease.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, you have a book that's out. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, sure. So the book is called The Sabbatical Method: How to Leverage Rest and Grow Your Business. And so, just like any high performing entity, right, our business needs rest, right? We tear the muscles and we do all the things, right? We have lots of growth and lots of fun things that we want to go after. And I personally feel like taking rest from our business not only can increase the longevity of the business overall from a performance perspective, but it can also, just like it did in my situation with my son, it can really, really help kind of uncover a little bit of those inefficiencies in the business, right? You can step back away from the business, give yourself an opportunity, give your team opportunity to fail a little bit. And I know that this sounds confronting and challenging, but it really will be the fastest way to be able to basically use this as a forcing function to professionalize your operations.
And that's the key word is professionalize, I think, because I think a lot of us are, we got started by accident, like you did. We're accidental and we just being reactionary and we're not, our work is professional, but we're not treating everything else as professional versus personal and really separating the two. And if you don't separate the two, there's going to be, that breaking point where you go, I don't want to do this anymore. Like there's literally, for the ones listening, you can get rid of all the things you don't like doing. I literally chatted with someone a little while ago. He's like, I want to sell. Why do you want to sell? He's like, well, I want to be a part of a bigger group. I said, why do you want to be a part of a bigger group? Well, I want to be a part of this group because they really generate leads really well. I'm like, why don't you just hire them? Why do you want to merge with them? Why do you want like, I was like, and then they were like, well, but there's some things I don't want to do. Why don't you get rid of it? Like literally, it's like easy questions that I can say looking from the outside. Now, if I'm saying it from the inside, looking at my business, I can't see those.
Yeah. It's challenging. It is. And that's one of the reasons I think, that I've worked with folks so I think elegantly is I'm able to kind of see without bias, right? Some of the really elegant solutions to some of the problems. And I think that as we start to access this, I mean, Bill Gates does a 2-week think week every single year. And Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation would never be in existence if he didn't take that 2-week period. Never. And that's the thing that is really interesting is when we give ourselves this opportunity to kind of step away, things can grow in our absence and we can get the type of clarity that allows us to ascend to the next level. I was actually reading something from, I think it was Alpine Ascents. It's one of the coaching companies that helps, climbers summit Everest. And they were talking about the number one reason why, climbers fail to reach the summit. And they cited altitude acclimation as the number one, meaning they literally did not rest for long enough at strategic periods of time in the ascent to prepare themselves for the next level. And I think that, even a simple flu, right, in that case can really just drive a climber down and be like, no, you're not making it today. And I think what we need to do is we need to prepare our businesses. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about operations is we need to prepare our businesses for joy in the day-to-day, not just at the summit. And that's one of the big things that we can start to do is leverage this rest, right? So no more can you say, I can't take a day off for my business, or I can't take this weekend, or I can't shut my computer down at 6 p.m. to go have dinner with my family, right? That is, sacrificing the day-to-day in service of these summit periods, which really are only, let's just call them what they are, right? 15, 20-minute little snapshots, little hits of success. Really, I'll show you a successful person when I see someone who's really living the things that they want to do every day, spending time with their family, pouring into their personal relationships. And I think it starts with just ripping the Band-Aid off and being like, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to, tend to the urgent and crowd out the essential.
Yeah, I'm glad you used the mountain analogy. We hiked a mountain like every Friday. We always do like what we call Epic Fridays with my buddies, and we climbed a mountain in Colorado last week, and we needed crampons and ice axes. Like that's how steep it was.
Whoa!
And it was more fun going up than it was at the top. And it's the same way when I look back at the first agency that we built and sold. I actually had more fun looking back at the tough times and enjoying the journey. That's why I'm enjoying the journey now, rather than just thinking of the summit going, what is it going to look like when I look up there? Like especially when you're at Everest, you can stay there like a minute or 2 minutes, take off your mask for a second, or you're going to die. Yeah. And that's how a lot of businesses are. It's like, enjoy the whole journey up, and then get your ass back down and find another mountain to do, because you can't breathe at the very top. So, just enjoy the journey. And I want to thank you too. You've been helping us out with SOPs and that kind of stuff. So 2 things: where can people find the book, and how can people reach out to you and get help with, creating the right systems?
Yeah, totally. So the book's available on Amazon. If you search the sabbatical method, it should come up. Also, everything is available at operationsagency.com, which is my website, and it should link you out to all the right places.
Awesome. Well, everyone go check that out. Simple URL. If you can't remember it, you got issues. Or maybe if you can't remember it, you really need their help, and just click on the show notes.
Too many penguins on the ice.
Exactly. Yeah, they can help you out. So go do that now. And until next time, have a swank day. Wait. Don't go anywhere. I have some bonus information for you. some of the best conversations we have on the podcast, I realized, was after I hit end record. So right now, I haven't hit end record, and I want you to hear some of the stories we chat about after the podcast is over. I think you'll really enjoy them. All right, good job.
Thank you. Man, your intros and outros are pretty killer, honestly. I was like dancing and grooving to the intro.
Yeah, those are always fun. Darby, I used to have on this little stream deck I have, you could hit this little button. Whenever he would show up, he'd be like, and he'd always like pump him up.
Amazing. I had a client at one point who did like a glitter button. And so it would just go, not literal glitter, thankfully,
Yes,
or else that would be a mess to
screen.
clean up every day. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be cool. So, well, amazing. Anything I can do for you?
No, man, you're doing it all. I really appreciate you having me, and I had a really nice time. I'm glad that we got to chat.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You did amazing. I like the pointers. I mean, if people just realized to eliminate some of the admin stuff just to make it simple, their life would be so much better.
Yeah, I think folks are afraid to get started and like confront some things, right? If changing means confronting that you might have been doing something wrong, I think folks have a challenge with that. And we actually talked about this, Steve and I, the other day. My husband, I'm a houseplant mom. Steve has like the outside stuff and I have the inside stuff. And we had to trim back one of our plants like really significantly in order for it to just like stay alive. And he was like, wow, I guess you really hacked that up. And I was like, no, watch, it's going to be amazing. And then eventually it looks great and it's getting great sun. And sometimes you got to cut some stuff back.
Yeah. I've been, my kids always made fun of our we have a meadow that I'm overlooking now. And when we moved in, when we built the house, they really it looked like our whole property looked like Matt Damon was going to walk out from The Martian. And so for a couple of years, like I'd have like little weeds coming and there'd be mud and dirt and it just looked really bad. And I just kept working at it, seeding it, right? And then, I'd come, chop things down. But what I realized now, it is amazing. Like I have this amazing meadow, all grass, wildflowers. And my kids were like, holy cow, man, look at all the green. And what I realized was all the weeds started insulating all the grass. And it took some time in order to do that. And so now you pull back the weeds and then all this beautiful grass is here. And I was like, see, kids, like you just have to wait a little bit. Like I literally had them on the 4-wheeler throwing out seed for years. And finally now
That's so great.
Finally took it.
I love that. I love nature's lessons, right? Because they really are just so impactful. I think when Steve and I got married, we were talking about like having a family and all the things. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm okay to have kids. Like, let's do this. But we have to have a farm. And he was like, what? This was like 10 years ago. He was like, no, we're never going to have a farm ever. And he like scoffed a little bit. And he was like, this seems like a lot of work. I'm going to have to handle it. And then now he's back in school for regenerative farming practices. And we're looking at pieces of land close to where I grew up. And I said, hey, you remember that inception moment when I told you that you were going to be a farmer like 10 years ago? And he starts laughing at me. But we actually talk about this with our boys all the time. I'm like, there are so many lessons that as a parent, I couldn't teach without this backdrop. And it feels invaluable to have this.
Yeah. Are you putting any animals on this farm?
Oh, heck yeah. Honestly, we mostly want to do livestock. We don't really care about the vegetables like as much. But yeah, we want animals. We really like animals.
That'd be cool. I'd love to have animals, but we have 40 acres and we actually have an HOA, which is a nightmare.
Oh, wow.
But one of my neighbors wanted to bring their zebra up. They have a zebra. Oh yeah. I know what you're thinking. And so the neighborhood.
Honestly, I love it, but it's cool.
Yeah. The neighborhood got word of this and they were like, oh no. Because anybody over 30 acres can have livestock at the time. And so they banned it. Because I'd love to have horses or like this used to be a big cattle ranch.
Interesting.
and so they banned it when they associated with the HOA. But damn zebra
Bummer.
crushed it. But
Dang
yeah,
zebra.
some of
Yeah.
the most therapeutic stuff is when I'm on the four wheeler with like the seating, or in a couple days I get this. It's called this Rammy. It's on the front of the four wheeler. It's a brush hog that you can raise and lower it with the winch, like you do a
Oh, yeah, yeah,
snowplow.
yeah. Yeah.
And I can't, like when I'm just going through crushing the brush, like it's therapeutic. Like I love it. Like I love
Oh,
working the land.
yeah, we honestly do too. We call it our meditation period. We have woods. I mean, we basically live in the woods. And so there's lots of dead branches and dead trees. The Northeast, unfortunately, the lanternfly has been around. So we've been cleaning up lots of dead trees this year. But honestly, Steve says that I go into the zone and he can't stop me from picking up sticks. So I just go for it and I just keep picking up sticks. And he's like hollering at me to get inside and help the kids.
Yeah, I love just clearing stuff and making it nice and trails or whatever. So, but awesome. Well, cool.
Epic.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. Hopefully
Thanks for
everybody
having me.
goes to the site and gets the book, and then hit us up when you need something.
Yeah, I sure will. I appreciate it. This was such a fun conversation. I'm so grateful to be on.
Yeah, awesome. All right, thanks, Alyson. Take care.
All right, Jason. Have a
All
good
right,
day.
bye.
See ya.